Before we get started, from now until May 22nd, I am running a giveaway for a free signed copy of The Littlest Elephant by Catherine Applegate. Follow the link in the description and subscribe there to enter. Must be within the United States to be eligible to win. And thank you for listening. Welcome to the Book Fair Podcast. My name is Anthony, and this week we have a report from PEN America on nonfiction titles banned in the United States. Local libraries push for funding local branches of Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, and a Tennessee resident has put together a website to deliver banned books to people across Rutherford County. Coming this Friday, we have an interview with Randy Smith, author of the early YA novel Ada Holloway's Had Enough. Make sure to follow the podcast so you can hear interviews from contemporary authors in children's literature. Let's begin this week by looking at some new releases, starting with Dad, written and illustrated by Christian Robinson. Dedicated to caregivers who give what they never got, Robinson's animal-centric ode to fathers moves with a realistically nuanced portrayal of parents as people. Narration unfolds through opposition. Dad is Here Now reads text accompanying a frog escorting tadpoles upon its back. Dad Had to Go Away follows as two wide-eyed owlets gaze at an adult in flight. While a seahorse models a tender father-child moment, a shark and other animals touch on the way that Dad sometimes lets you down and makes mistakes. When concluding pages pivot to human relationships, the depth-filled and textured paint and collage artwork captures fatherhood with tenderness and honesty. One dad wipes away a child's tears, and another sheds a few of his own. Even amid the example's push and pull, an underlying message of steadying care reassures. Dad is with you, even when he's not. Human characters are depicted with varied abilities and skin tones, and this book is recommended for ages 3 to 6. Next is My Papi's Hands by Melissa Seron Richardson and illustrated by Edel Rodriguez. A builder father's hands anchor this gratitude-filled tribute to a Papi actively working to support his community and family. In English and Spanish, Seron Richardson's crisp narration expresses admiration for the way My Papi's hands build cities and turn mesas into mansions and songs into sonrisas. Voicing a variation on a refrain, the speaker astutely observes, "My world would look so different without My Papi's hands." Tropical coloring gives Rodriguez's stark contemporary-feeling artwork, created with oil-based woodblock ink on paper, a warming brightness. Empathy infuses moments of notable contemporary relevance, as when Papi, head in hands, tired from the hate, appears amid signs declaring migrants out and go back. As the pair work to build a garden, signage that reads Bienvenidos drives home a profound message. Because of Papi's hands, I know what my hands can do, and together we will build a future. Characters read as Latinx, and this book is recommended for ages 6 to 8. Next is The Last Dragon House by Liv May Morris. Debut author Morris mixes tongue-in-cheek humor, subtle social commentary, and beguiling fantasy adventure vibes to present a thoughtful series opener. For his 11th birthday, Ollie receives a hand-me-down jacket, a kite, pressed flowers, and a request from his parents that he get a job to support the family. Following instructions from a mysterious listing calling for someone unafraid to die, Ollie finds himself at Dragon House, a refuge hidden from Oak Ridge denizens, who believe dragons imaginary. Eager to avoid employment at Oak Ridge's silverware factory, which is notorious for its unsafe working conditions, Ollie accepts a job offer from Dragon House's wise proprietor, Dr. Lady, who teaches him about polishing death worm scales and bonding with kitchen-dwelling fairy dragons. The work proves peaceful until Dr. Lady is poisoned by an unknown rival. Her only hope for an antidote requires that Ollie, accompanied by his new draconic friends, embark on a journey that will test his courage and compassion. Even as he contends with wealth inequality, the negative effects of societal progress, and other physical and moral dangers, Ollie emanates unwavering kindness and empathy, imparting a positive energy to pulse-pounding plotting, which juxtaposes the coziness of Dragon House against the gritty realism of Oak Ridge's Industrial Revolution. Ollie cues as white, Dr. Lady has brown skin, and this book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Next is Roar by Varsha Bajaj. A tiger-obsessed fifth grader finds purpose and peril awaiting him abroad in this absorbing, eco-conscious adventure. 11-year-old Rohan Kumar, feeling adrift in the bustling Texas home he shares with his parents and twin baby sisters, leaps at the opportunity to spend December in India with his grandparents and cousin Mira. Most exciting for Ro is his grandfather's employment at the Bajaj Sanctuary, home to Bengal tigers. Once there, Ro discovers that the forest sanctuary is under threat from a mining consortium planning excavation nearby. Alarmed by the potential devastation to the locale's ecosystem, Ro and Mira resolve to help in their grandfather's advocacy efforts by supporting his legal appeals, reviewing camera trap footage, and searching for poachers' snares. Riveting third-person narration primarily centers Ro, while occasionally spotlighting chapters from the perspective of Arya, the tiger whose survival hangs in the balance, which lend intimacy to the conversation, which lend immediacy to the conservation stakes. Introspective language seamlessly incorporates accessible information about the animal's storied place in India's cultural and environmental history, as the cousins confront not only habitat loss, but also the sobering realities of greed and mortality. Bajaj juggles suspense with sensitivity, crafting vibrant characters and a propulsive plot that underscores the cost of inaction in a heartfelt, page-turning call to stewardship. An author's note concludes, and this book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Next is The Unchosen One by Amy Sparks. Prophecy meets pratfall in this gleefully self-aware fantasy from Sparks. Ever since her family was eaten by a dragon, white-queued Thessalonia monk has lived at the Citadel on the Isles of Peril. Now 12, Tassie learns that she is the Chosen One, destined to save the island from the return of the terrifying Shadow by reciting an ancient incantation. But Tassie is not convinced that she possesses the meek spirit, a calm mind, and learning and wisdom beyond their years that the prophecy foretold. So she recruits her best friend, Spin, a gadget-inventing griffin, and sets out to find the true Chosen One. Along their journey, they acquire dubious assistance and guidance of Darley, a young elf with a reputation for theft, deception, and general sneakery. Despite these apparently lackluster qualities, Darley proves useful as the trio faces off against threats dispatched by the Shadow to eliminate the Chosen One. Tongue-in-cheek subversions of classic fantasy tropes situate this chaotic adventure, which eschews deeper magical world building in favor of humorous character dynamics and anachronistic touches like restroom hand dryers and parenting guides made of bound parchment with glossy magazine covers. Dangling plot threads seed excitement for future installments while delivering an appealing, fantastical adventure. This book is recommended for ages 9 to 12. The final title this week is Queer and How We Got Here, A Personal History by Hazel Newlevant. Transgender cartoonist Newlevant blends memoir with snippets of queer history in this entertaining and educational graphic novel. An adult Newlevant acts as an omniscient narrator, guiding readers as the creator reflects on their teenage and early adulthood experiences exploring their gender and sexual identity. Sporadic cartooning sans panel borders depicts an opening scene of teenage Newlevant coming out as bisexual to their parents. Subsequent personal milestones include recollections of fledgling romantic endeavors and beginning hormone therapy. Each pivotal shift in their self-perception, conveyed with vulnerable sensitivity, is interspersed with corresponding revelatory historical moments, including the founding of Daughters of Bilitis, the first United States lesbian rights organization, and the fight to legalize birth control. Stories of prominent figures whom Newlevant believes paved the way for them and others to obtain access to information and affirming care are additionally peppered throughout, highlighting individuals like birth control advocate Margaret Sanger, German sexologist Magnus Hirschfeld, and gay American Indians founders Randy Burns and Barbara May Cameron. Simple, stylized illustrations in blue and orange hues, accompanied by direct dialogue, impart urgency, culminating in a sprawling yet approachable introduction to the impact of prior generations' advocacy on a contemporary landscape. This book is recommended for ages 14 and up. That covers the new releases for this week. Next, we'll be taking a look at some news. But first, if you appreciate the work being done on the Book Fair podcast, there are a number of ways to show your support. First, you can like, comment, or follow wherever you are currently listening to help push the show out to new listeners. Second, you can follow the podcast on Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok at BookFairPod. You can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair to find episodes posted early as well as links to news sources used throughout the show. Following on Patreon is free and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. Of course, the best way to help the Book Fair podcast is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Now, on with the show. Next, let's take a look at the news, starting with a new report from PEN America. Since 2021, PEN America has been tracking book bans across the United States. And on May 7th, their annual report was released. With nearly 4,000 titles removed from shelves in school and public libraries, there have been 6,780 total bans across 23 states the organization has monitored. Surprisingly, while most banned titles are fiction, 29% of the total titles removed, just over 1,100, were non-fiction works. According to reports from PEN America, this is double the number of non-fiction titles banned from last year. Among the non-fiction titles restricted in libraries are memoirs as well as educational materials. Reading directly from the report, quote, "Non-fiction titles in school libraries and classrooms play a critical part of K-12 education, often recognized as the gateway to literacy. For instance, a study on student preferences showed that more than 80% of first graders chose nonfiction when picking out a book to own." End quote. PEN America's report and the studies cited therein are both linked at patreon.com/thebookfair. Paraphrasing the following paragraph in the report, Exposure to nonfiction increases critical thinking, which helps combat rising misinformation through social media and AI. PEN America also mentions the commonly banned topics in nonfiction this last year. 52% of impacted titles contained themes of activism and social movements, representing the most commonly banned nonfiction topics. The final paragraph in this segment of PEN America's report reads, quote, "This increase should not be a surprise given the increased crackdown on activism and free speech by the federal government over the last year. These themes encourage young people to question authority and societal inequities, confront injustice in their communities, and participate in social changes to address disparities in the world around them. Suppressing these themes sends a message of discouragement and the need to maintain the status quo." End quote. Next, our coverage returns to New Braunfels, where a recent Texas law forced district-wide school library closures. At the beginning of the 2025 school year, when state legislation was set to take effect, the New Braunfels Independent School District voted to freeze student access to secondary libraries due to regulations imposed by SB 13, which requires school libraries remain free of harmful material, indecent content, and profane content. The school board closed off access to libraries to make time for manual review of titles. The school district says that it has completed its formal collection review for compliance with the new state law. A compliance coordinator, Cheryl Corey, was assigned to oversee the review. Corey said that AI technology was prompted using SB 13 as the starting point for the review. This created an initial list of 175,000 titles that were flagged for manual review. After a preliminary manual review, the list contains 455 books. 219 titles were found to be compliant and returned to shelves. 28 were moved from middle school libraries to nearby high schools. This left 161 titles deemed non-compliant, meaning they will not be returning to library shelves in New Braunfels Independent School District. Undeniably, some titles listed are not appropriate for some ages, though the sweeping action to control content from the state level is not taking into account commonly accepted standards of literary, scientific, or historic value. The Book Fair podcast holds the belief that media collection and curation should be handled by professionals, and any objections should come from residents of the district, not from the state. Next, as Indiana cuts a beloved literary program, librarians push for local fundraising to close the gap. Dolly Parton's Imagination Library is a program that delivers books to children aged 5 and under. It is operated on the state, city, and county level by different organizations, sharing the logistical duties and expenses to offer the program to families. States will share funding duties with libraries and nonprofits that handle registration and deliveries for Imagination Library. Indiana switched from state funding to private fundraising, with local organizations responsible for their 50% match of funding in order to remain operational. And now, as the state has stopped funding Imagination Library in partnership, private donors are unaware that local programs also rely on private donations. Library directors across the state worry that potential donors have contributed to the statewide campaign and will now not support local funding initiatives. Adams County Library System runs a local branch of Imagination Library that serves nearly 1,000 children ages 5 and below. The cost for Adams County to run Imagination Library is about $17,000 per year. Indiana is just one state where Imagination Library needs help with funding. With an estimated cost With an estimated cost of only $25 to $31 per year, a contribution through their website goes a long way. Donations can be made at donate.imaginationlibrary.com. You can also search for eligibility for your child at imaginationlibrary.com. Next, let's turn to the good news this week, starting in Ohio, where voters continue to support public libraries. Last year, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine changed how libraries in the state are funded, shifting from a guaranteed percentage of the state budget to local ballot initiatives where voters must approve any increases to annual budgets for libraries. This was a roundabout attempt to slash funding to public libraries, predicated on the belief that voters would not support tax increases. The only two rejected proposals were for Washington County Public Library and Norwalk Public Library. The levies that passed will generate more funding through property taxes. The results of the ballot approved more funding, as well as renewing existing levies, continuing approved funding in the previous election. The executive director of the Ohio Library Council, Michelle Francis, said, quote, "These results send a powerful message. At a time when there is active discussion about eliminating property taxes in Ohio, voters made it clear they are willing to invest in services that matter. Ohioans trust their libraries to be good stewards of their tax dollars and are willing to support them at the polls." A poll conducted by Public Opinion Strategies in 2026 found that 90% of people believed that public libraries and associated resources are important to the community. Ohio also has the second highest amount of library visits per capita in the country. Despite the governor's best efforts, the people of Ohio support their libraries and reflect that by electing for more funding. The final story this week, coming from the same district where the Rutherford County Library Board fired the library director for refusing to remove books at the request of the board chair. Rutherford County is a community that is divided. At the meeting where former library director Luann James was fired, there were individuals in support of the library and those in favor of the proposed book bans. Thankfully, there are people that are doing good in response to the hostility coming from the library board. One resident is expanding efforts to deliver banned and restricted books to residents across Rutherford County, and his efforts made local news on WKRN.com. Brandon Donahoe, creator of BorrowBannedBooks.com, said to News 2, quote, When I hear that a book is on the list to possibly be banned, I go ahead and order 5 more copies of it, because without fail, everyone in Murfreesboro decides they want to read this book as soon as they can't get it at the library. End quote. Donahoe works alongside a team of volunteers to deliver titles to the doorstep of people across Rutherford County. The titles offered are specifically ones that were targeted by the county library board. The team also added a digital archive that currently contains 72 titles that are available for anyone to access. Donahoe notes that the actions of the library board and board chair Cody York only drives up demand. Quote, "All these efforts have done is make the books more popular, for one, and make it so that you used to have to go to the library to get them. Now, they'll just be mailed to your house, or you can read them on your phone. So they've made them more popular and more accessible than they ever were." End quote. This will conclude another episode of the Book Fair podcast. Coming this Friday, we will have an interview with Randy Smith, author of Ada Holloway's Had Enough. If you'd like to stay up to date with the show, you can follow wherever you are currently listening, or on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Book Fair Pod. If you'd like to help the Book Fair podcast grow, you can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair. Following on Patreon is free, and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. You can find links to news sources as well as episodes posted early. Simply add the RSS feed to your preferred podcast platform. Of course, the best way to help the Book Fair podcast is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Thank you so very much for listening, and as always, I'll talk at you next time.